I never imagined I'd be the kind of woman standing outside another woman's hospital room, especially that woman, my husband's mistress. The thought alone made my chest tighten. But I needed to see her face. I needed to look into her eyes and understand what she had that I didn't after 32 years of marriage. The hospital air was cold and sharp, filled with that sterile smell of bleach and loss. My heels clicked down the endless hallway, echoing like a countdown I couldn't stop. I clutched my purse tight against my chest, my wedding ring digging into my skin as if it were punishing me for still wearing it. Room 314. I'd repeated that number for 3 weeks like a prayer, or maybe a curse. It took me that long to find the courage to come here. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, untouched meals, and fake smiles whenever my husband, Corey, said he had to work late. But today, I wasn't pretending anymore. I stopped at the door. Her name was printed neatly on the whiteboard beside it. Keisha Williams, age 28. 28. I was already 30 when Corey and I said our vows. She hadn't even been born yet when we promised forever. Through the small window, I could see the edge of a hospital bed, perfectly made. I had rehearsed this confrontation 1,000 times. I'd walk in with dignity, ask her one simple question. Was he worth destroying a family for? I took a deep breath like I used to before delivering bad news to patients. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I'd been a nurse for over 3 decades. I could handle this. Or so I thought. When I finally pushed open the door, everything I'd prepared for crumbled in an instant. Sunlight spilled across the room, warm and golden, almost beautiful in a cruel way. And there, sitting on the edge of the bed, was Corey, my husband. The man who'd kissed me goodbye that morning said he was heading to the office. He wasn't at the office. He was there, holding a spoon, gently feeding applesauce to the woman in the bed. I froze in the doorway, unable to breathe. It wasn't just that he was there. It was how he looked at her, the tenderness in his eyes, the soft smile that used to be mine. When he dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin, something inside me cracked. The watch on his wrist caught the light. The anniversary watch. The one I'd worked extra shifts to buy him last year. The one engraved with "Forever yours, Christine." He was wearing it while he fed his mistress. My purse slipped from my hands. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the room like a gunshot. Corey's head snapped up. Our eyes met, and in that single silent second, 32 years of marriage ended. "Christine," he whispered. But I was already backing out of the room, the antiseptic air choking me. I turned and ran down the hallway, past the nurse's station, past the families with flowers, past everything that used to make sense. By the time I reached my car, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I gripped the steering wheel and sobbed until my body ached. 32 years. 32 years of love, loyalty, and lies. And just like that, my forever shattered. Sitting in my car that afternoon, I kept replaying everything. Every anniversary, every whispered, "I love you," every night I'd stayed up waiting for him to come home. How do you trace the moment your life starts to fall apart? Because for me, it didn't begin in that hospital room. It began long before. Corey and I met 32 years ago, back when I was 28 and working the night shift as a brand new nurse at County General. He was a broke law student who spent his nights in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a single cup of coffee while he studied. I thought he was homeless the first time I saw him. His shoes were worn down, his suit too big, and yet there was something about his eyes. They held the kind of hunger that wasn't just for food, but for a future. Just poor, not hopeless, he'd joked when I offered him a sandwich. And that was the moment I fell for him. I didn't just fall in love with Corey, I invested in him. While my friends dated men with steady jobs, I worked double shifts so Corey could chase his dream. When his student loans didn't stretch far enough, I picked up extra hours. When he couldn't afford suits for interviews, I found them secondhand and tailored them myself. "You're building our future," I'd tell myself during those long nights on my feet. "This is what love looks like." And for a long time, it did look like love. I watched him graduate, tears in my eyes, proud of the man I'd helped him become. 2 months later, we got married. Our first home was a tiny apartment with paper-thin walls and a leaky bathroom faucet. We didn't have much, but we had dreams. He used to hold me close at night and whisper, "One day I'll buy you a real house with a yard and a garden." And he did. 8 years later, he made partner at his firm. We bought that 4-bedroom colonial on Maple Avenue, planted roses in the front yard, and filled those rooms with laughter and the smell of Sunday pancakes. We had 2 beautiful kids, Marcus and Jasmine, and I thought we were proof that love could last if you worked hard enough. Those were the golden years. Family dinners, vacations, neighborhood barbecues, the kind of life people post about online, never knowing what happens after the photo is taken. But kids grow up, they move out, and suddenly the house we'd filled with so much noise was quiet, too quiet. When Jasmine left for Seattle last spring, I told Corey, "This is our time now. We can travel, find new hobbies, maybe fall in love with life again." He smiled, but it never reached his eyes. That's when the little changes started. He began working late, changed his phone password, started wearing new cologne, dressing sharper, looking younger somehow. When I asked about it, he'd laugh it off. "Just trying to keep up, babe." But then came the new shirts, the secretive texts, the missed dinners. The distance between us grew until it felt like I was living with a polite stranger who happened to wear my husband's face. And the worst part? I kept pretending it was fine. Because when you've spent 3 decades building a life with someone, denial feels safer than admitting it's falling apart. After that day in the hospital, something inside me shifted. The tears dried up, and what replaced them was colder, sharper, clarity. I'd spent my entire marriage believing that love meant trust, but now I understood. Sometimes love blinds you to the truth that's been staring you in the face all along. For 32 years, Corey and I shared everything, our bank accounts, our passwords, our dreams. So when he suddenly started guarding his phone like it was classified government property, I knew something was wrong. That instinct, the same one that had saved lives in the ER, was screaming at me. My chance came one morning when Corey rushed out of the house for an emergency meeting, leaving his phone charging on the kitchen counter. I stood there staring at it, heart pounding. My hands shook as I picked it up and entered our wedding anniversary as the passcode. It still worked. And just like that, Pandora's box opened. Most of his contacts were familiar, friends, clients, family, but then I saw it. Tucked between Larry and Mom, Keisha. My breath caught. I tapped it open and saw the call history. Dozens of messages, late-night conversations, the kind of frequency that doesn't happen between business associates. That red heart beside her name felt like a knife twisting slowly. I put the phone down exactly where I found it and spent the rest of the day pretending to be the same wife he thought I was. Folding laundry, making dinner, smiling on cue. But inside, I was calculating. The next day, I went through his things. Not snooping, investigating. There's a difference when your whole life might be a lie. In the back of his sock drawer under old winter thermals, I found them receipts, jewelry receipts, dozens of them. Tiffany Pandora, KJ Jewelers, thousands of dollars, all paid with money from our joint account. But it was the smallest one that shattered me. A gold chain with a handwritten note on the back, for K until you're feeling better. Love always see. Love always. I sat on our bed, staring at the receipt spread across the comforter where we used to lie side by side. That bed suddenly felt like a crime scene. That night, I pretended to read while Corey sat across the room on his laptop. When his phone rang around 10 p.m., I heard it. The softness in his voice. A voice I hadn't heard in years. "Hey, beautiful. How are you feeling tonight?" He spoke in low tones, tender, reassuring. "Don't worry, baby. I'll be there first thing in the morning. You just rest." Then, silence. The kind of silence that suffocates. After a moment, I heard him again, but his tone changed. Professional, measured. "Hi, this is Corey Jones calling about Keisha Williams." "Yes, I'm her emergency contact. I just wanted to check on her progress emergency contact. In all our years of marriage, I had been his emergency contact, the person who would be called if something happened to him. Now he'd given that place, my place, to someone else." The next morning, after he left for work, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. But I wasn't resting. I was going to find out who Keisha Williams really was and why my husband was visiting her in the hospital, like she was his wife instead of me. Because if Corey was building a second life, I was done being the woman who didn't see it. By the next morning, I wasn't a wife anymore. I was an investigator, and the subject of my case was the man who once swore he couldn't live without me. I started with what I knew. Her name, her number, and the fact that she was in the hospital. It didn't take long for the rest to fall into place. I parked across the street from Corey's office around 10:30 a.m., coffee in hand, heart racing. Sure enough, he came out of the courthouse a few minutes later, dressed in his perfectly pressed suit, carrying a small bag that looked suspiciously like a gift. He didn't drive toward home or the firm's second office. He headed straight to Mercy General Hospital. I followed, keeping 2 cars behind, watching him disappear through the sliding doors. With that familiar confidence that used to make me proud, now it made me sick. 15 minutes later, I walked in through the same entrance, flashing my hospital ID badge like I belonged there, because I did. "Excuse me," I told the charge nurse. "I'm checking in on a patient, Keisha Williams." She smiled. "Room 314. Poor thing was in a bad car accident a couple of weeks ago. Her fiancé's been here every single day. Such a devoted man. Her fiancé. It took everything in me not to crumble right there at the desk." "Yes," I whispered. "Very devoted." When I walked back to my car, it hit me like a freight train. Corey wasn't just having an affair. He was living a double life. But what he didn't know was that I still had one advantage. Nurses notice everything. We read people. We document details. We never stop until we have the full picture. That night, I gathered every receipt, every note, every observation, and laid them out on the kitchen table. I stared at the evidence of my own betrayal. Money gone, lies told, a man living 2 versions of himself, and realized I needed help. So I called my sister, Maya. We hadn't been close in years. She was a private investigator. Tough, cynical, always suspicious of men who seemed too perfect. Corey never liked her, and now I understood why. "Maya, it's Christine." A pause, then surprise in her voice. "Wow, haven't heard that tone since college. What's going on? I need your professional help." I told her everything, the phone calls, the jewelry, the hospital visits, the fiancé revelation. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "Christine, this isn't a fling. It's a second life. Give me 48 hours. I'll find out who this woman is and exactly how deep this goes." She was true to her word. 2 days later, Maya called back. "You sitting down?" I was parked in front of the grocery store, afraid to take this call inside the house Corey and I still technically shared. "Keisha Williams," she began. 28 years old, works customer service at a call center. But here's the bombshell. I found an apartment lease. Both their names are on it. Corey Jones and Keisha Williams. It started 23 months ago. Rent's $1,800 a month, paid straight out of your joint savings. My stomach turned. 23 months. That was over $40,000. And neighbors think they're engaged, Maya added quietly. He's there most weekends. Fixes things, brings groceries, acts like the perfect partner. I couldn't speak. Christine, she said softly, he didn't just cheat. He replaced you. I stared out at the parking lot, at people pushing carts full of ordinary lives, and realized my entire reality had been rewritten behind my back. But as tears blurred my vision, one thought cut through clear as glass. If Corey could live two lives, then so could I. Only mine would be built on truth, not lies. When Maya said, "It's time to go to war," she didn't mean with fists or screaming matches. She meant with evidence, strategy, and patience. The kind that breaks a man quietly until he has nowhere left to hide. Our goal was simple. Make Corey think I was broken, that I'd finally given up. Let him relax, get comfortable, and reveal everything. "We'll let him hang himself," Maya said, tapping her pen against her notebook. "All you have to do is play your part." And so, for the first time in my marriage, I became an actress. The plan was flawless in its simplicity. I'd tell Corey I needed time to figure out our marriage. I'd leave, supposedly staying with my sister. In reality, Maya had rented a small apartment just a few blocks away, close enough to monitor everything. Before I left, we installed cameras in every key room. The kitchen, living room, bedroom, even the guest room where Corey had been sleeping more often lately. They were small and discreet, disguised as picture frames and air fresheners. The footage would upload directly to a secure server that only Maya could access. When everything was in place, she gave me one final piece of advice. "Once you walk out of that house, don't go back until we have what we need. No matter what happens, Christine, you don't break character." That night, I sat at the kitchen table waiting for him to come home. When he finally walked in, he looked exhausted, but not from work, from guilt. "Corey," I said softly, "we need to talk." He hesitated in the doorway. "About what?" "About us. About how I feel like I'm losing you." I looked down, twisting my wedding ring like a nervous schoolgirl. "I don't even recognize us anymore." He sighed and dropped his keys on the counter. "Christine, we're just going through a phase. The kids are gone. The house feels empty. It's normal." "Is it?" I asked, voice trembling. "Because it doesn't feel normal to me. You work late every night. You barely talk to me. I feel like I'm living with a ghost." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Maybe we just need some space," he finally said. "Time apart could help." The ease with which he said it nearly broke me. He didn't fight for me. He didn't even pretend to. "You're right," I whispered. "Maybe I'll stay with Maya for a while." Just to clear my head, he nodded, relief flickering across his face like sunlight through blinds. "That's probably best." The next morning, I packed a suitcase, filling it with clothes and lies. I hugged him goodbye at the front door. "Take care of yourself," I said, forcing a small smile. "You too," he replied. "Call me when you're ready to talk." I drove away from the house I'd turned into a home, the same house where we'd raised our children and shared every version of ourselves. But this time, I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was setting the stage. Maya's command center was ready when I arrived. Multiple screens filled the small apartment, each one showing a different camera feed from my house. "Now we wait," she said, settling into the chair beside me. We didn't have to wait long. Less than 24 hours after I moved out, Corey pulled into the driveway with someone in the passenger seat, Keisha Williams. I watched through the monitor as he helped her up the front steps of my house. My chest ached, but my hands didn't shake. "Remember," Maya whispered. "He's giving us everything we need." Just breathe. And as I watched my husband guide another woman into our bedroom, the one where we built 32 years of memories, I realized something chilling. Corey wasn't just betraying me. He was erasing me. For the first few hours, I told myself I could handle it, that watching him with her through those hidden cameras would make me stronger, that I needed to see it with my own eyes to believe it. But nothing prepares you to watch someone rewrite your life in real time. On the monitor, Corey was all smiles, helping Keisha through the doorway like he was carrying his bride over the threshold. I couldn't look away as he gave her a tour of the house I'd decorated, the one filled with my memories, my laughter, my years. He pointed at family photos on the wall, the same ones I used to dust every Sunday morning. "We'll replace these soon," I heard him say. "Make it feel more like us." Replace these. U.S. My throat tightened. The next morning, Corey brought her breakfast in bed. Our bed. At first, it looked like care. She was still recovering from the accident, and the nurse in me understood that. But then I saw how he smiled at her, how he brushed a strand of hair from her face. It wasn't caregiving. It was intimacy, the kind I hadn't seen from him in years. Maya sat beside me, her expression grim. "Let him keep talking," she whispered. "Every word is evidence." On the second day, Keisha found my vanity table, the antique one Corey restored for our 10th anniversary. I watched as she sat in front of it, touching my jewelry, holding up my pearl earrings to her ears, the same ones Corey gave me for our 25th anniversary. "These are beautiful," she said, turning to him. "Where did they come from?" He laughed softly. "Just old stuff that was left here. The previous owner had decent taste, I guess." The previous owner. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. 32 years of marriage, and I was now the previous owner. Keisha smiled, slipping my grandmother's gold bracelet around her wrist. "It goes perfectly with my skin tone." "Then it's yours," Corey said, grinning like a proud husband. "Everything in that box is yours now." I felt something twist inside me, something sharp, hot, alive. Not heartbreak this time, not grief, rage. Over the next few hours, I watched her move through my house like it was a showroom she'd just purchased. She rearranged pillows, opened cabinets, tossed out dishes she didn't like. "These plates are hideous," she said, laughing. "We'll start fresh." Corey nodded. "Whatever makes you happy, baby." And when she found my scrubs, my work uniforms, the symbol of 30 years of nursing, she wrinkled her nose. "What are these ugly things?" "Christine was a nurse," Corey replied, his tone dismissive. "Not exactly a glamorous career." I blinked hard, trying not to cry. 30 years of saving lives, holding hands through grief, staying up through double shifts, and it was not exactly glamorous. Keisha bundled my scrubs into a trash bag. "We'll get rid of all this. The whole house smells like hospital." As she threw away the last piece of my old life, Corey watched her with adoration. "This is your house now," he said. "My house, my marriage, my life." And he'd handed it to her like a gift. I turned away from the screen, chest heaving, every breath jagged. Maya reached out and steadied my hand. "He's documenting his own destruction," she said quietly. "Let him." Because every word, every smirk, every cruel erasure was proof that the man I'd loved for 32 years was gone, and the woman I used to be was finally waking up. By the third night, I'd seen enough. I'd watched Corey give her my jewelry, my bed, my home, and I realized something simple but powerful. He'd been building his story, but it was time for me to write mine. Maya and I didn't need vengeance. We needed justice. "He thinks you're broken," Maya said, scrolling through recordings. So we'll let him think that, right up until the moment you flip the script in front of everyone he respects. And that's exactly what we did. I called Corey 2 days later, pretending to sound small and fragile. "I've been thinking," I told him softly, "about what you said, about taking space. You're right, maybe we can't fix this. But before we make any decisions, I'd like one last dinner. Just family. A goodbye done the right way." He hesitated. "What kind of dinner?" "Something simple," I said. "Your parents, the kids, my sister, maybe David from the firm. We should tell them together he loved the idea." Of course he did. He thought it made him look noble. The calm, patient husband saying goodbye to his unstable wife. That Saturday, I came back to the house I hadn't stepped into for weeks. It didn't look like home anymore. The photos were gone. The walls felt hollow. But I wasn't there to mourn. I was there to end it. When Corey saw me in the doorway, he smiled with that same rehearsed warmth I'd seen him use in court. "Christine, you look better." "I've had time to think," I said, setting down grocery bags. "Let's make this a night to remember." By 6 o'clock, the guests began arriving. Our kids, his parents, my sister, even his law partner, David Morrison. Everyone smiled politely, completely unaware that the truth was about to detonate in that dining room. Dinner started normally enough. Laughter, small talk, forced pleasantries. Corey played the role perfectly. The doting husband holding it together for his fragile wife. Then he spoke. "Christine's been under a lot of emotional stress," he said gently, resting his hand over mine. "This separation's been hard on both of us." Maya's eyes met mine from across the table. Showtime. I stood up slowly, my voice calm but steady. "You're right, Corey. It's been hard, mostly because I spent months wondering who my husband really was." He blinked. "Christine." "No," I cut in. "It's my turn." I turned my laptop toward the table and hit play. From the speakers, his own voice filled the room. "Just some old family stuff. We'll replace it all with our own memories. She's just someone I used to know." Every face at that table went still. His mother gasped. Jasmine's hand flew to her mouth. "Christine, where did you—" "From the cameras I installed before I left," I said, my voice clear now. "Cameras that recorded everything you did in this house with your fiancé. Cameras that captured how you spent our savings to fund your double life." Maya stepped forward, dropping a thick folder of documents onto the table. "Financial fraud, adultery, and medical identity theft. You've been using joint marital funds to pay for another woman's care and signing as her fiancé." Corey's face went pale. "You can't prove any of this," he stammered. David, his law partner, picked up a document and frowned. "Actually, she can." The room erupted. Voices, disbelief, anger. But through it all, I stayed calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was leading. When the noise died down, I looked directly at Corey. "You spent 2 years erasing me," I said quietly. "Now everyone can see the truth. You didn't just lose your marriage tonight, you lost your mask." I grabbed my purse, nodded to Maya, and walked to the door. "The dinner was delicious," I said, glancing back once. "It's the last meal I'll ever cook for you." And just like that, I left him sitting in the ruins of his own lies. 5 months after that night, I woke up in my new apartment. Sunlight spilling through open windows, the city humming below. For the first time in years, I didn't feel dread pressing on my chest. It wasn't freedom I felt exactly, it was peace. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Once Maya's evidence went public, Corey's carefully constructed world collapsed faster than I could have imagined. His firm dissolved the partnership. The state bar revoked his license after proof surfaced that he'd used client accounts to hide personal spending. He lost his job, his reputation, and eventually the house he'd tried to give to another woman. When the final court ruling came through, the judge didn't just grant me the divorce, he granted me justice. I kept half of everything, including the proceeds from selling the house. But what mattered most wasn't the money. It was that Corey could never again manipulate another woman the way he'd manipulated me. "He's finished," Maya said the day we got the call from my attorney. "Legally, financially, socially, done." But I wasn't celebrating. I was rebuilding. I took a nursing supervisor position at County General, the same hospital where Corey and I first met. I stood in that hallway on my first day back, staring at the same coffee machine where he used to study late at night, and I realized something profound. I wasn't standing in the ruins of our story. I was standing at the beginning of mine. The first few weeks alone were strange. I'd catch myself setting 2 coffee mugs out of habit or glancing at the door when the elevator chimed. 32 years of routine doesn't disappear overnight, but it fades, slowly, quietly, until one morning you realize you don't miss the noise anymore. My children, Marcus and Jasmine, struggled at first. Corey's betrayal had shaken their sense of stability, but when I told them, "Your father's choices don't define your love for him or mine for you," I saw relief in their eyes. They didn't have to take sides. They just had to see me survive. And I did. One evening, I sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights, writing in a new journal. Not the one filled with grief, but a clean one. A book for the next chapter. I wrote, "I spent 3 decades being the caretaker, the peacemaker, the one who stayed calm while everyone else fell apart. Now I'm learning to be the woman who saves herself." Through hospital co-workers, I eventually heard about Keisha. She completed months of therapy and was rebuilding her life too. When her counselor reached out with a message from her, I agreed to listen. "I'm sorry," she'd written. "I didn't know the truth. He told me you were gone. I didn't hate her anymore. She'd been trapped in the same web of lies I had. Only she didn't have 30 years of experience seeing through pain. I hope she finds peace," I told Maya later. "She's young enough to start fresh." And so was I. Now, every morning, I wake up and make 1 cup of coffee. Just for me. I take long walks before work, listen to jazz, and fill my home with laughter from friends who remind me what real connection feels like. Love didn't break me. It revealed me. Because sometimes, the end of a marriage isn't the end of your story. It's the moment you finally start writing it for yourself.